بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على رسوله النبي الكريم. So today we'll be speaking about those things that break the wudu. Previously we discussed about the fara'id of wudu, then we spoke about those things that are sunnah and mustahab of wudu. And now today we'll briefly discuss about those things that break the wudu. So والمعاني الناقضة للوضوء كل ما خرج من السبيلين. So he says those things that break the wudu. Firstly, there are two types. One is physical, something that has physical body or something physical. Another is something which is hukman, or something that, as we will discuss inshallah, basically something which does not have a physical body, which breaks the wudu. So the first is anything that comes out from the private parts, right? From the front or the rear. Anything that comes out of either private parts, that breaks the wudu, right? So not everything breaks ghusl, but there are things that, anything that comes out from the front or the rear, this will break the wudu, definitely. So whatever comes out, it doesn't have to be, it can be anything, whether it's urine, whether it's something else, that will break the wudu, right? So that's just something, again, even in the rear also, anything that comes out also will break the wudu. The second is that والدم والقيح والصديد إذا خرج من البدن فتجاوز إلى موضع يلحقه حكم التطهير. So then he says that blood, pus, and any other fluids that come out from the wounds, when they leave the area where it exited from and it travels to another area. Now, to explain this, right, that when someone bleeds, right, so generally the misconception is that anytime you bleed, that automatically breaks wudu, or that if you bleed and any blood that touches on another person's cloth is also najas, for example, right? But that's not the reality. The reality is that only flowing blood breaks wudu. Only flowing blood breaks wudu, and only flowing blood is impure, according to us. So we say that when, let's say you're bleeding from your hand, for example, right? Or let's say you got a cut here, for example, right? Now, so long as the blood stays at the surface of the wound, your wudu will not break. And even if, let's say, for example, with your hand, you touch your clothes, for example, and now there's, effects of blood on your clothes, that still does not make your clothes impure. Flowing blood is impure. Non-flowing blood is not impure. So if your blood is not flowing and it touches other parts of your clothes, that does not affect anything, and you can still pray with that amount. I mean, this happens very frequently. Even, I mean, last week also there was someone who was bleeding a little bit, but he was asking whether this breaks the wudu or not, whereas it does not break the wudu. Only flowing blood breaks the wudu. Same thing with pus and anything else, any other types of fluid that exits from the other parts of your body due to some wound. So long as it doesn't leave that area, it does not break wudu. Once it does, then it does break the wudu. The third is وَالْقَيُّ إِذَا كَانَ مِلْءَ الْفَمِ. The third thing that breaks the wudu is vomit when it's full mouth. Okay, vomit when it's full mouth. So obviously it's a bit disgusting, but we'll still discuss it just so that we understand what it means, right? So if someone vomits, what does full mouth mean? You know, what does it mean to be full mouth? Full mouth means that a person cannot take it back in. It's so much that the person is unable to control it, and it automatically comes out. Sometimes people, they vomit and it comes to like the throat, and then they're able to swallow it back, right? It just goes back in, and you have the taste, but it's not actual, so that doesn't break wudu. Only once you vomit out full mouth, then that breaks the wudu, right? Some people, they have this misconception that vomiting also breaks your fast. This is not correct. Vomiting does not break your fast. Many people have this misconception that vomiting breaks your fast. It does not break your fast, okay? Unless and until you intentionally vomit, which, I mean, it's unlikely, right? But that is mentioned as well. So vomit breaks the wudu, it does not break the fast. وَالنَّوْمُ مُضْطَجِعًا أَوْ مُتَّكِئًا أو مستندا إلى شيء لو أزيل لسقط عنه. Right? So he says that now he mentioned three haqiqi things that break the wudu, three actual things that break the wudu, three physical tangible things that break the wudu, which we mentioned were whether it's urine or feces or blood or this vomit. Those are those three. Next, the fourth thing is sleeping. So sleeping, either lying down or leaning against something that if you were to remove that thing, they would break their wudu, or that they would fall, right? So for example, let's say I'm leaning against this wall, right? If this wall were to be removed, I would fall down. Or if I'm leaning against this chair, for example, if the chair were to be removed, I would fall down, for example. That breaks the wudu also, right? Oftentimes, many people, this happens, that they're leaning against, a chair, or they're sitting on a chair and then they fall asleep during the, I've seen this happen many times, during Jummah, right? They fall asleep during Jummah and then they pray Salah afterwards. Whereas that's not correct, right? I mean, if you fall asleep, even for a single second, if you fall asleep, even if you didn't pass gas or anything, just by falling asleep, that breaks your wudu. So just be very careful when you are tired. I know sometimes people have long days, especially during Taraweeh. I'm not going to go into it, but I remember one year, a bunch of years back actually, I led Taraweeh and I was so tired that day. I was just like falling asleep, but I wasn't like in Salah. I was falling asleep, but I wasn't leaning against something. So technically, Salah is valid, right? In the sense that, like, let's say you're standing and sleeping, something it happens, right? You're standing and sleeping, your Salah does not break, right? Your wudu does not break. Yes, I mean it's not good. You shouldn't do it, but technically, I wasn't leaning, by the way. When I'm leaning, you can't sleep. But anyways, so if you are standing, or for example, you're in tashahhud, for example, or even in sajda, so long as, like, for example, your arms are not on the ground, your forearms are not on the ground, your wudu does not break. And so long as you're not leaning against something, whether it's your forearms or anything else. Sometimes people, they sleep even on their arms, like they sleep with their arms on the ground or something. This is also, I mean, this will break your wudu. So be very careful. Like for example, that posture is fine. Like if you were to sleep in the posture Rafi is sitting in, you would be okay, right? Like meaning with your legs, or you're tying your legs, because you won't really fall in that position. And if you fall, then you should go make wudu again. But essentially, lying down or leaning against something and falling asleep. وَالْغَلَبَةُ عَلَى الْعَقْلِ بِالْإِغْمَاءِ. And the fifth is that if someone believes that they're unconscious, right? That they believe غَلَبَةُ الظَّنِّ, meaning that their overpowering thought was that they fell unconscious, right? Sometimes you can't really tell if you fell unconscious or not, but if you believe that you fell unconscious, then you should repeat your wudu. وَالْجُنُونَ, and also if someone becomes mentally unstable or insane, rather, the scholars, they say, this also removes their wudu. And I'll mention one thing about ghalabat al-dhann. Remind me if I forget, but I'll mention it at the end. The next is وَالْقَهْقَةُ فِي كُلِّ صَلَاةٍ ذَاكِ رُكُوعٍ وَسُجُودٍ. This is the last one, that laughing in any salah which has ruku and sajda. So if you laugh in any salah, that also breaks your wudu, right? Not only does it break the salah, but it also breaks your wudu. This is like a reprimanding you for laughing in salah. You should not be laughing in salah. So if someone does laugh in salah, then this would nullify not only the salah, but also their wudu. So these are a couple of things that breaks the wudu. Regarding ghalabat al-dhann, some people, they have OCD, right? Some people, now this is the end of discussion of regarding wudu. That's next week we'll discuss about ghusl and stuff. But just to understand, how do you know, let's say someone feels, maybe I passed gas or something like this. Some people, they also have OCD. They may think that they didn't do wudu, or they think that something did come out, whereas it didn't come out. First of all, there are many ahadith on this, right? So one hadith mentions that when you urinate, you should also, after you urinate and you also clean yourself properly, after that, you should sprinkle some water on your trousers, so that shaitan cannot whisper and say, oh, look, you have urine on your clothes. But rather, it's just to remove that OCD, to remove that feeling of doubt. Shaitan wants to poke and tell you that, oh, listen, these are urine, or, you're leaking urine or so on. So that's something that shaitan tries to do, to play with us, right? So therefore, even if someone does have OCD, the rule is, this is a very important rule, right? The rule is, al-yaqeen la yazulu bil-shak. Right? This is something we learned like in later years, right? Obviously, this is a principle of fiqh that al-yaqeen la yazulu bil-shak, meaning that when you have yaqeen on something, it cannot be removed through doubts. Okay, remember this very well. That anytime you have yaqeen on something, it cannot be removed by doubts. So you have yaqeen that you did wudu. If you are doubting whether you have wudu or you didn't have wudu, you have wudu. Because you, by yaqeen, you knew that you had wudu. You knew that you did wudu, but you don't know for sure if you broke your wudu or not. You have shak whether you broke your wudu or not. So therefore, automatically you have wudu. Does that make sense? So al-yaqeen la yazulu bil-shak, right? That yaqeen is not removed through doubts. So this applies to many things, many things. That anytime you have doubts that did I, for example, did some urine come on my clothes or not? Again, go back to that hadith, that yaqeen, or go back to that where the hadith Rasulullah said to sprinkle some water to remove the OCD and so on. I know people in our community also who face issues with OCD and they have a lot of difficulties where, recently one brother, he was speaking to me about, his OCD led him to like wash every single thing, from the bed sheets to every single article of clothing, and because he kept doubting whether he has purity or not. So the reality is that if there are specific questions you can ask me, but generally remember this, that al-yaqeen la yazul bi-shak, that yaqeen is not removed by any doubts, any ambiguities. That concludes today's. Any questions on what we discussed today? Any questions on the regarding wudu? Because this is it. We will not be discussing. I mean, we're going to go into ghusl next week. So
I have a question.
yeah, go ahead.
So when you wudu, when somebody takes the IV and so on, you feel one blood coming out, what happens to it?
Yeah, good question, right? So if blood comes out, whether sometimes people, they don't understand, they say, or even when, for example, someone is drawing or donating blood, for example, right? And they say, oh, well, technically blood didn't move to the other part of the body, right? But the reality is blood did come out. A large amount of blood did come out, that if it were to be stopped. And on that question, I'll answer another question also, which is that let's say you're bleeding, but you just keep dabbing it, you keep touching it, and that way blood never technically moves over, right? But you just keep dabbing it and cleaning it before it has a chance to move over. What's the ruling on that also? So both answers I'll give right now. The first answer is that if someone does, let's say, for example, someone gets an injection or something, and from there, let's say a drop of blood comes out or something like this, that does break the wudu. I mean, anything that moves from that spot to another spot breaks the wudu. Same thing with drawing blood, donating blood, anything like that, that breaks the wudu also. The second question is when someone keeps dabbing and someone keeps cleaning the wound before it has a chance to flow. Even then, the rule is that if you believe that, or if you have a ghalabat al-dhann, that if I didn't do this, the blood would overflow. Meaning the blood is so much that if I didn't keep cleaning it, then it would flow over and it would go to the other parts of the body. Then that also does break wudu. Okay. Any other questions? Online, you can ask online. Where's the chat section? Okay. Yeah. Any other questions related to those things that break wudu?
You mentioned we many times notice whether in football, especially somebody who takes very well, but not leaning against something,
Yeah.
but you see their after their eyes are closed.
Yeah. So eyes closing is fine, right? So if I were to sleep like how I am right now, right? Like not leaning against anything, my arms are folded. I'm not leaning against my arms or anything. I'm just sitting on my rear, right? But I'm not leaning against anything. If I sleep like this, it's okay. This does not break your wudu. But if I'm leaning, like I put my hand down, like I put my arm down and I sleep like this, then if someone were to move my arm, I would fall down. Yes. And so that does break your wudu. So
How about intentionally? If somebody knows that it doesn't break wudu And he says, "Oh, let me get an
It doesn't matter. So long as it doesn't, so long as he's not leaning, it doesn't matter. It just matters about the
Somebody's good at balancing.
yeah, I mean, if some people are good at balancing, then then they'll, they'll be. I'm not going to give any other ideas. Any other questions? Yes. Outside of Salah, does that break wudu? No, it doesn't break wudu. But you shouldn't laugh uncontrollably. You shouldn't be like a hyena. You know what I mean? Like constantly laughing and stuff. The Prophet ﷺ rarely laughed. Right? He would smile frequently, but he wouldn't laugh as often. Also, there are a couple of other things. According to other scholars, it breaks wudu. According to our scholars, it doesn't. For example, some scholars, this is like other madhahib, they say that eating like cooked food also breaks wudu. We say that no, that does not break wudu. Other scholars, and you'd be shocked, some scholars, they say that touching a woman breaks wudu. We say that no, that doesn't, right? So you touch your wife, you have to go do wudu again, right? This is the Shafi'i madhab, that's what they say, right? That if you touch a woman, then you have to repeat your wudu. Right? So it's an entire madhab, they say this. So for example, I had a Shafi'i friend who was showing me one masjid. He was showing me around and he said, every time I come to this masjid, I have to repeat my wudu because each time I keep bumping into women and then I don't know what he was doing, but but he has to repeat his wudu. So alhamdulillah, we say that no, touching woman does not break a wudu until and unless something leaves the body. That's when obviously it breaks the wudu. Also, pre-ejaculation also does not break ghusl. Pre-ejaculation does break wudu, it does not break ghusl. This is very important. Just to those who understand, adults, it's very important to remember. That doesn't break ghusl, it breaks wudu. Okay. So these are a couple of things that, according to other scholars, it does break. According to us, it does not break. So whether you touch women, whether you eat hot food, some people they say like if you eat camel meat or meat or something, then you have to repeat your wudu. You do not have to repeat your wudu. It's okay. According to us, we say that you don't have to repeat your wudu. Hanafis, yes. Every time I say us, this happened a couple of times.
Women means you wife or some other woman.
Any. According to those scholars, those scholars they say that.
Wife or some other woman.
So like when they go to the haram, what they do is they adopt our view. It becomes very difficult. Yeah, so exactly what I was saying about haram. Generally, what they do is, again, this is not our view. We say that it does not break your wudu, so technically it's okay. But generally, the Shafi'is, when they go to the haram, what do? They adopt the Hanafi position. They say that the Hanafi position is a lot more lenient here, so we'll take the Hanafi position, right? Sorry. Yeah. Shopping around, which you should not do, but but it makes life easier. And yes. Yeah. So it doesn't break your wudu, but you should clean your mouth before coming to the masjid. Ideally, before you interact with others, you should clean your mouth so that it doesn't inconvenience others. Any last questions? I'll take one last question, then we'll end off. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the Shafi'i madhab, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. I'll find out. If you want, I'll find out. Alhamdulillah, not our madhab. Yeah. Yeah. So it makes life more difficult, I mean, according to us, alhamdulillah, we don't have that rule. You can eat whatever you want, it doesn't break your wudu. Also, some people they think that if you do something haram, it breaks your wudu. It does not. If you do something haram, it does not break your wudu, although it's not good. You shouldn't be doing haram things and then obviously, but it's recommended to repeat your wudu, but it's not required to repeat your wudu, even if you do something haram, whatever haram it may be, it doesn't break your wudu technically. Again, we're talking black and white. Fiqh is black and white. We're not talking about whether you should do it or you should not do it, but rather we're like sleeping thing also. We're not talking about whether you should sleep like this or not. We're just saying that black and white. This is what's permissible. This is what's not permissible. This breaks wudu. This does not break wudu. So fiqh is, as we'll discuss inshallah in the next, throughout the weeks, you'll realize fiqh is very black and white. It's about right and wrong. It's about what breaks, what does not break. It's not about what you should do, what you should not do, right? Remember this when we discuss fiqh, inshallah. We'll stop here, inshallah, and we'll continue.
One last question.
Yes.
What about cutting the nails or hair?
Yeah, cutting the nails or hair does not break your wudu, right? Yes, as I responded on the chat, yes, I said that some people, they say camel meat breaks wudu. We say it does not break wudu. All right, Jazakumullah khairah. May Allah Ta'ala accept it. Inshallah, I'll see you all next week, inshallah.